Hello and welcome to another episode of Scott Reads Comics. Today I'm going to start an occasional feature on the show called Five Favorites. This will be the debut, and I'm going to debut with, I think, a very fitting theme, my five favorite X-Men stories, presented in no particular order. These are the ones that stick with me, that I love the most. Now, this list could, of course, change over time, as all people's opinions change. Especially in comics, you see something and it makes you remember or perhaps change a view of a story. But these are my five favorites right now. And the first one in my list of five is represented in X-Men Earthfall, published in 1996 by Marvel, reprinting three issues, 232 to 234, that were originally published in 1988 by Marvel Comics. And the reason I love this is it is vintage Chris Claremont, Marc Silvestri, Dan Green, with a little bit of Joseph Rubinstein sprinkled into the mix. It is post-Dallas, post when the X-Men went through the Siege Perilous. So they're kind of coming to the end of their Australian outback adventures. And the other great thing about this is the return of the Brood. And one thing Claremont does in the opening of this story that he does so well in so many of his X-Men stories and other things he writes, he'll introduce you to some seemingly innocuous, heretofore unseen normal characters, ostensibly normal, but not in these guys' case, really normal. He'll make you care about them in just the space of a couple of pages and a few panels and a few snatches of dialogue. He's so good at that. And these poor people are just horribly victimized by the return of the Brood, who show up in this giant shark ship, which is totally great. This space shark, I assume. And this poor woman here is murdered. All of this guy's friends are murdered. He is running away in panic in his van until, I love the transition here. Does he get caught? Yes. You can see here that his visage has changed. And he's obviously become a victim of the Brood. The whole point of this story is, and there's some foreshadowing here, Glory Day Ministry. The whole point of the story is the Brood are coming to Earth to get revenge and to take over mutants, to use as hosts to make superhumanly powerful Brood progeny. We get a little bit of Madeline Pryor here, pre-Goblin Queen. The stage is being set for her transformation into the Goblin Queen. Here she mysteriously vanishes. And get back to our main story. The X-Men know that this guy is a host for the Brood. He is as yet subconsciously unaware of his own plight or the fact that he isn't a mutant, as he's able to throw around the newly empowered Colossus, who got better from being paralyzed during the mutant massacre. And he is manhandled by this guy, who I think is going to become the character Brickbat, who's a superhumanly strong mutant, implanted with a Brood egg. Then he becomes a full Brood. In every X-Men in this team, I love. This is a great lineup. We have Longshot on the team, who's really great. Wolverine's back. Rogue is her sassy, sexy self in this. Really cool character. And I love the look that Silvestri gives her with the hair and in the revised costume. Really cool. And of course, great action. This is the end of the first issue. Now into the next issue. And just a snatch of dialogue here from Colossus. We defeated your kind before, monster. Times change, Bunky. New players, whole new ball game. By the by, the name's Brickbat, because I hit like one. So Claremont's great with these character designs. I love Storm's look here. Somewhere between her punk look that debuted in X-Men 173 and kind of her previous classic look that we saw from her original appearance. So, and this guy's called Dive Bomber. Really great. There's Havoc's on the team. Yeah, this is just, again, my belief, the best version of the Claremont-Silvestri pairing. Really cool. We're going to go back to our Madeline Pryor interlude here. This is kind of where I think the Goblin Queen is going to be born, as her identity as Madeline is stripped away. And of course, we find out later that this is all a ploy of Mr. Sinister. Back to our main story. Great fracas here with these superpowered brood. And here we have the third and final one. And Joe Rubinstein comes in on the inks, and you can tell a difference between Rubinstein's inks and Dan Green's over Silvestri's pencils, but not unpleasant. I prefer the Dan Green Silvestri team up, but this one is really cool too. Here we're going to see Colossus show no mercy. He has changed and darkened since the Mutant Massacre, for sure. Back to that interlude. And here we have Sim, and Madeline Pryor is embracing her role as the Goblin Queen. We see her first time in her full costume here. So pretty cool stuff. And Wolverine being Wolverine here, surviving this incredible fall. I think Rogue is under brood control right now in this panel. Dazzler's on the team, so great. This was just a cool team with a really cool... Wolverine almost being transformed again. My only complaint about this reprint is we don't get the original covers. But again, they're cramming 3 issues worth of amazing content into one cool volume. And of course, at the time, it was $3. I got it for $1, so I'm not really complaining too much. Pretty cool stuff. Very nice. So that was number 1. Number 2, I've covered this in episode 37 of my show. Way back in episode 37, I covered how I picked this, one of the original Marvel trade paperbacks. You can see the $6.95 price tag. Picked it up at Eyes. The binding was shot on it. I picked it up, I think, for $5. And I had it spiral bound for reading, and it's got this great Baxter-like paper in it. I love the paper in these old trade paperbacks. Really nice. Hasn't really appreciably yellowed or discolored over the many years. This is an old book. This was one of the later printings, I think. Let me see if I can see what printing. Yeah, it doesn't really say, but that's all right. Anyway, this is number 2 on my list. It's the Dark Phoenix Saga. I'm not going to go through it in detail. If you want to see an almost page-for-page flip-through of this, please see episode 37 of my show from a few years ago, and you'll get to see that. But yeah, this is the full Dark Phoenix Saga represented in glorious Baxter paper-like color. Really nice stuff. And you know, you could argue that this is going to be number 1 on many people's list. And I do love it, but I've read it so many times. It's been so often reprinted that for me, it's still great. I still love it, but there are other stories that are more compelling to me, and I'm going to get to those in a sec. We'll just do our final flip through here. Oh yeah, awesome here. Turns the tree to gold. Hang on, Petey, I'll get you out of there. No, you won't, Wolverine. Cripes, Genie changed the tree into solid gold. It must weigh tons. So this is the final battle with Dark Phoenix prior to them actually getting control of her. No, it's the penultimate battle, because in the next issue, the X-Men developed a limiter, and they're able to, in this epic battle, Xavier defeats her with the power of love and he's incredibly strong mutant mind. And of course, they're all spirited away. And 137 is the ultimate trial by combat where the X-Men have to fight the Imperial Guard for control or for the life of Phoenix and the fate of Phoenix. Great stuff. Number 2. Or I'd say number 4. That was Earthfall was 5. Dark Phoenix is 4. And then 3 on my list which I'm gonna show you with the wonderful classic X-Men reprint series, are X-Men's 172, 173, and 174. Mainly 172 and 173, but 74 has some trailing stuff in it. And these are the Paul Smith, Bob Wycheck, Claremont team-up era. And I love, love, love these issues. I was buying these off the rack as a 14-year-old. I think they were 1983, so I was 13. And Rogue has just joined the team. Look at that Paul Smith long panel. These are so awesome. They certainly deserve a more detailed examination. And it's nice, too, in this that they've kind of got the flexographic process under control now. It was a little rocky at first, but this actually looks pretty good. The other thing I like about these classic X-Men reprints at this point, there's no more extra material, which I just prefer. Just reprint the stories. The extra material in classic X-Men a lot of times to me was just a distraction. Oh man, this is so great. When I got this 172 off the rack as a kid, a 13-year-old, I must have read this thing that weekend that I got it. I must have read it 20 times. I just kept picking it up and reading it. It was so good. I think I had bought a stack of 3 comics and we were at my Aunt Maxine's place for some holiday. I think it might have been the Easter holiday weekend or something. And I just reread those comics over and over and over, and they're so good. So the X-Men go to Japan for Wolverine and Mariko's wedding. And of course, they run afoul of Viper and the Silver Samurai and all the machinations going on there. All the while, Cyclops is dealing with the mystery of Madeline Pryor, who, of course, we saw in the first book on my list, the first stories on my list. And here she's sort of just being introduced. She hasn't been around for more than a handful of issues. The action in this is great. Yuriko shows up, the Wild One. So this is where Storm undergoes her most startling transformation, going from the traditional Storm to the punk rock version. Yeah, and the best thing about these, you get the cover, and that's all the extra material that you get. And I am on board for that. Really good. So, yeah, this one was Scarlet and Glory. And the first story, where's the title? Is it coming up here on the next page, maybe? I might have missed it. But anyway, really great. So that was 172. And then 173, for the Adam Hughes covers on these, too, he does a really beautiful job on these covers. This one, he reverses it, so Rogue is in front and Wolverine's in the back on this cover, which is a nice touch. Still, we have our same team on the interiors, and man, this is so good. And there's Storm, pre-punk rock transformation. I love Yuriko. I would have loved to see Yuriko join a team at that time, or maybe they could have made a team of new characters with her in it. Set the stories in Japan. It would have been totally awesome. I don't know, just spitballing here, have Paladin show up, maybe some other characters with an international flair. Really cool, though. This fight between Wolverine and the Silver Samurai, I would argue one of the best fight sequences ever illustrated in a comic, at least in a mainstream comic. Look at that. Just phenomenal. No word balloons, captions necessary. Claremont lets Paul Smith's cell animation-like style do the trick. Here is so great. What a detail. The samurai, a normal man, would have been beheaded. Wolverine cannot be beheaded because of the nature of his skeleton. Those C1 through C7 cervical bones in the back of his neck are laced with adamantium. You're not cutting through that. Really great. And of course, Viper, so awesome here. Her blaster, and Rogue. This is where she truly becomes an X-Man, I would argue. The kid's either a show-off or she doesn't know her own strength. That shove flame in there puts Mariko and me into orbit. And she takes the blast until Viper's blaster explodes. See, Wolvie? Guess I ain't as invulnerable as I thought. So Viper flees with the Silver Samurai. So much for my brilliant career, and I think my life. Don't talk stupid. My healing factor can save you. No, you need that to save yourself. If I absorb your powers, Wolverine, you may die. My risk. Besides, darling, who's going to stop me? I'm a man who pays his debts, Rogue. You sacrificed yourself for Mariko. It's only fair I return the compliment. Just such a beautiful moment here. One of the best in X-Men history. Really great. And we get at the end of this story, prior to the wedding, this sinister figure who has been dogging the X-Men the last few issues and is somehow tied in with Madeline in some way. He shows up in Sorcel's Mariko, and we're going to see the terrible outcome of that. And here is our first view of post-punk Storm, looking incredible with that new look. And Mariko stops the wedding. Wolverine asks, why? Because, Gaijin, you are not worthy. And the ending sequence here is just remarkable. Wolverine with that single tear, and we see Jason Wingard, mastermind, is behind all of this with his illusion powers. And we have a beautiful cover, so we can see the reversal here. I love it, love it, love it. And then real quick, 78, I include this in this story because we get a little bit of some tie-up here. Of course, I love anytime we see Carol Danvers in a story, binary in this case. She's a Starjammer now. Xavier recovering because his body had to be cloned after once surviving a brood implantation in 167. And here's our tie-up. Northern Japan, the ancestral seat of Clan Yoshida. Boom! Mariko! Turn away, Wolverine-sama. You are not welcome here. Leave this place or suffer the consequences. Make me Tomo-san. Ai! As Lord of Clan Yoshida, I command you all to lay down your weapons. I will have no blood shed in my house. That, darling, remains to be seen. We were to be married, Mariko. You swore you loved me with all your heart. But on our wedding day, you called it off. Why? As I told you then, you are not worthy. That's not good enough. So, the Honor Blade of Clan Yoshida, he leaves there. And of course, Kenichiro Harada, the Silver Samurai, is here to take it up. And I love panels that show the scale difference between characters. He's a huge man. Wolverine is not, so it's really nice detail by Paul Smith there. Just awesome. And great Kitty reading a Star Wars comic, really cool. So, nice kiss here between Kitty and Peter. Their romance is blossoming. And we get some sort of a shade of what's to come with a Dark Phoenix flashback. And we get a payoff for 175. Now, 175 is Paul Smith's last issue. He only gets through about half of it, and John Romita Jr. takes over from there. But that's a story for another day. The fourth, or I should say the second story on my list is the Proteus Saga, which I would say begins with X-Men 125. In fact, the title of this epic collection is Proteus. So it's going to be X-Men 125 through 128. And again, it's another Byrne Claremont story. No surprise, there are a lot of Byrne Claremont stories in my three of the five X-Men stories on my five item list are Byrne Claremont. So yeah, that's just how it is. The stuff was that good. Oh, I love John Byrne's Beast. Gotta mention Terry Austin as well. His inks are incredible. Love Claremont's titles too. How sharper than a serpent's tooth. Love the literary references. The X-Men rushed to Muir Isle to see why Lorna Dane was screaming, who attacked her. And we get the flashbacks of what's going on. Moira McTaggart tells him it's her son, Proteus. And again, I've covered these in the past. The casual way that Proteus murders these characters, who you don't know very well, but again, Claremont's brilliant at letting you get to know a character, a normal character, and then, something terrible happens and you're really busted up about it. 127, I actually own this issue. I don't own all the Byrne Claremont X-Men anymore. I'm slowly sort of reacquiring them. Casually, as I run into good deals, I'll grab one. The prices, though, are for anything in fine or higher, they're really going through the roof, even post-pandemic. So, yeah. So the Proteus Saga, which I've covered on the show before, I'm not going to belabor it, but yeah, that's number 2 on my list. And then my number 1 X-Men story is Days of Future Past, presented in X-Men 141 and 142 in 1980, I think, by Marvel Comics. And I'm going to use my facsimile editions here because I just don't like to manhandle the real editions. And I prefer to use single issues versus Epic collections because they're just more filmable. You get more of the art. You don't have that gutter that you're losing art in. And yet, what can we say about this story? What can I say about this story that really smarter commentators haven't already said? I'm just going to stick to how it made me feel at the time. Just what an incredible story it was. And this is the very peak of the Claremont-Byrne-Austin partnership. And then we were, after 142, just one issue away from its dissolution, which is sad. Especially when you see what John Byrne might have done with X-Men Elsewhere. Some of his interesting ideas, things like that. But we had what we had. Cockrum came back. He did a fine job, but you're following John Byrne, and that's never going to be an easy task. So, really great dystopian future that the X-Men are trying to prevent, desperately trying to prevent. And just a remarkable story of time travel. It's really affected me. I've written tabletop RPG and skirmish adventures kind of based on stealing ideas from this, mining this for ideas. It's just so good. Kitty, the adult version of Kitty, sent back in time, Terminator-like. I mean, this came out years before the Terminator came out. So, yeah, the idea of going back in time to try and alter events to prevent a dystopian future. Of course, I think that was a Harlan Ellison story anyway, which was, of course, before this. But Captain Universe, love that ad. Again, print a collection of house ads, Marvel. You will sell a bundle of them. The action sequences going from the future back to the past or what was the present in that moment are really great. We get this Storm as the nascent leader of the X-Men, and we get this great confrontation mid-battle between her and Wolverine over Wolverine's use or potential use of lethal force. So it's really cool how Storm asserts herself here. And Wolverine and Colossus using clever tactics to defeat the Blob and Avalanche. Love the fire elemental. Love the weather effects here. So remember, Byrne's about to jump ship to go to Fantastic Four to write and draw it. And things on the X-Men would never be the same, obviously. This run of excellence will never be seen again in comics. Just tremendous. And of course, the last issue, 143, would be a Kitty Pryde focused issue, the Demon. So yeah, that is my 5 favorites for X-Men. My 5 favorite stories encompassing a number of really great issues. I really encourage you maybe to think about what your 5 favorite issues are of any given story, I'm going to do Avengers. I'm going to do Defenders. I'll probably dip in and do over to DC and do Suicide Squad. So yeah, it's a fertile ground for just talking about comics, which is what we love to do. It's what we do here. We read comics, we talk about comics. And I hope you enjoy it when we do. And if you did, please like and subscribe. Tell your friends. I'll bring you more soon on Scott Reads Comics. Thanks for watching.